car.
Right. How's everybody doing?
That snuck up on me.
Yeah. That's why I'm just like, I'm talking right now. the 1 minute before we go live.
Wow.
Yeah. We should have like a whole outtake of all of that. So anyway, we were talking about what we're going to be eating tonight, which is on Wednesday night dinner. We're having what?
We're having meatloaf and mashed potatoes.
And carrots, I think.
Thank you, Jeanette. Yes, carrots. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so yeah. I love Wednesday night dinners.
and I came in her office and she was looking through a book trying to figure out what dessert was. So.
Oh, did you have a say in it?
I did. Well, I just told her do something with strawberries because I'm allergic to them, so then I won't eat it. So. I
wish I was allergic to something that was sweet. It never seems
Jeanette's
to happen.
Always so great, man.
She is.
It would be the most stressful day of my life cooking for 100 people.
Oh.
Not knowing how many really you're cooking for, just guessing.
I'm the same.
She's phenomenal.
She's really, really a blessing to our church. So speaking of, finding joy in the middle of all of these things we're talking about, you started the series.
I did.
And it was pretty profound.
Yeah, we started off the series in joy. IN-JOY, and the whole idea of talking about where do we hear Jesus directing us in our life through the parables and the teachings that he offered to find ourselves in joy. And so my conversation with everybody last week was that joy is not an emotion. It's beyond that, and that basically we don't find joy. We live into it, and when we stay with Jesus, that's how we find it and discover it and have it discover us. And so, it was. I felt like it was a good introduction. We've got got a lot of topics that we're going to cover because we want people to come away from this with the sense that it's durable and for all of life, not just for the good stuff, but for the really rough stuff too. And you're gonna really talk about that this week.
Yeah. Before we go on to what we're talking about this week, you said something, and I wrote it down, but I don't have my notes with me. You were talking about how that if we don't have joy, and I'm going to misquote you, but it was some kind of sign of spiritual lack of. What did you mean by that?
Jesus makes it really clear in John 15. He says that, that God wants joy for us. That's the life that he wants for us. And so the indicator is if we're not in joy, if we're not experiencing that, then there's something that we need to check. There's something that we need to go back to the Word or get with God in our deeper prayer times and just say, God, what am I missing? Where am I? So I offered 3 things that folks, and the guidance was that if we don't believe that joy is something that can find us, if we're not willing to believe that joy is ours, then we don't have the possibility of finding it. And then the third premise was that that's what God wants for us, for life. So I do. I think it's an indicator that something is not tuned correctly spiritually. But you've got to believe that joy is more than an emotion for you to get your equilibrium wrapped around.
Because if you're always seeking the emotion of feeling good, you're going to pursue things that you think will make you feel better about yourself, about your life, and whatever that is. Yeah. But that's not what joy is.
For years, when I was in my college and even in grad school when I was pursuing my seminary degree, I would watch people, and there's nothing wrong with that of saying what are their spiritual disciplines, but I was just trying to imitate. I was like, because if I do what they do, I'm going to get what they get. And God has something very much in mind for Brian. Yeah. And it may not look exactly. And the joy that he has in mind for me isn't exactly what Patina's. Because I even talked about looking at you or looking at someone else going, why do they have it? So,
exactly.
Anyway.
I remember one of my first, not including family lessons, but my first lesson, I was pretty young. I'd say I was like 20, and I went on visitation. I don't even remember what the circumstances were. But I went to see a woman who was a shut-in at my church, my new church, and we were going to make her feel better. It's Sunday. We're going to go visit her. And I will never forget, we walked in and she had diabetes, and it was so bad that she had lost her legs. She was in her bed. She couldn't get up and move around. And she was the most joyful person I literally have ever met. I'd say she was at the time probably almost 80 years old. She was just filled with the Spirit. And I left there and was like, wait a minute, she can't walk. She's in a room by herself, and she's so happy and overjoyed, and it just rubbed off on me. But it really kind of made me think deeply about what it means to be a follower of Jesus. It's one of my first experiences. And this week, we're going to take joy and really, we're going to go to a place that is where a lot of people reside. And we're going to talk about worry and anxiety and fear. I remember when you and me and Wade, and it was during COVID, and we sat down, I'll never forget it. And we were talking about how that COVID was going to affect not only adults, but children, and it would affect them in a lot of negative ways. And it, unfortunately, is true. And children are anxious. Families are more anxious than ever. And I'm going to be talking about that because there's some really, they're not difficult things, but there's some things that we can do if we don't want to live in and dwell in that place of anxiety. What can we do? And I'm not going to, this is, to me, when I think about joy, anxiousness, anxiety, fear, all of these things can rob us of joy, even though joy isn't an emotion. That contentment, that being happy with the Lord and walking in the Spirit.
Well, anxiety is a real thing. And
yes, it is.
Just like I'm going to be talking the following week about failure and letdown and loss. And those are all real things.
Yes.
This message series isn't us saying, well, you should never have anything to be anxious about. You should never sense that you failed. That's not what we're saying. The anxiety is real because the things that happen in our life are real.
That's right.
Where does joy factor in to us living differently?
For me, when I think about, as an example of this week, anxiousness, it's living in that place all the time. Now, there are situations that people need to be seeing a therapist. I'm not even suggesting that that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the everyday people.
Right.
And when we dwell, and we're not supposed to be living in that place of anxiety all the time because we're human. Something happens. We get scared. We're anxious about something. We think we failed. We think we did this, whatever it is. But it's how do we get out of that mindset? Right. Is kind of the thing.
You related back to when you and I and Wade were talking about this issue around COVID. And I remember him as a therapist, really sharing some rich insights into, what happens when people live with just anxiety after anxiety after anxiety, the unknown, and so it was really insightful, some of the stuff that he shared with us, and I think some of the stuff that's going to come out in the series based on where we've been. Think about the last 4 or 5 years in this world.
Oh my goodness! Yeah.
With the pandemic and with the political climate, and with wars that now are on almost. They're not being fought globally, but the resources coming all over the globe, and we've got natural disasters and all these things. In fact, today, when you and I were talking about the message, I'm going to be very interested to watch people when they, in your message, hear the list that you started, because it's an anxious place that we live in, this world of ours.
It is. So, and as you said, because when I read that to you, you said that probably only took you a minute and a half to create, which is totally accurate. And that was just like off the top of my head. And, I've also been thinking about how that you were talking about the wars and all these things going on. And it's not that there haven't been anxious times before. For me, it almost seems like we just know about so many things that are going on. Like before, people could live in their own little space, and there was anxiety. Maybe you didn't have the food you needed, or the weather was weird, but you didn't have this constant barrage.
I turned on the television, and once or twice a day, you get informed about what's happening now.
Yeah,
it's constantly.
Yes,
and if I go to make a phone call, when I open up my phone, there's a news feed there.
Yep.
And at some level, that's awesome that we're so plugged in and connected, but we just can't unplug from the things that can make us anxious sometimes.
I'm gonna talk a little bit about what happens to me when I feel overwhelmed, but it's led me into some really deep thought, and I really hope that we're in a weird space in a lot of different ways in the world and the church and all these things, but I hope that we can just get back to the simplicity of what Jesus is asking of us.
Well, the reality is that things like anxiety, if we approach it from a spiritual perspective, can take us to some really deeper places where God says, I want to commune with you here.
Yes.
In the midst of this anxious moment, for better things, for joy.
For joy. And I'll say this too. I've had people, see what you think about this. I've had people say to me, well, if you're not worrying about it, then you don't care. And so there's going to be a lot of really interesting things that, I can't talk about it.
I know some pretty caring people because they worry a lot.
Yes, me too.
I think there's appropriate levels of things that need to be addressed.
Yeah.
So worry is a signal, but this worry that just becomes a cycle.
Exactly.
That's not worrying for the purpose of dealing with things. That's just run amok.
Right. Run amok. That should be the name of the sermon. Run amok. But it's good. I'm glad we're doing this series. And
that should be every series we do. Should just be run amok from here on out.
Everyone is going to be called that. Yeah, and how Jesus gets us out. I'm grateful that we have the scriptures to go to, and that we have Jesus as an example of how he lived and the things he taught, and that's what we keep going back to. In this series.
And it's interesting that, the church calendar is a circle. It never ends. And so here we come back around to, in the regular calendar, it's fall. But for us, we're back into our mission opportunities, Palm Valley. We're going to start our work days back there. There's just so many good things on the horizon. We've got homecoming coming up the first week of November. Cell with our traditional music is putting together a huge Christmas musical program that I think, if I've heard this right, it's something that he created. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure that he's the one, maybe with his dad or somebody, and they created this.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we've just got so many good things on the horizon, but it's just blended in with all the anxious things of this life. And, the church is really that kind of beacon that says there's more than just anxiety. And
that's right.
One's a great.
Oh, and you know what? I do want to say this before we go. If you guys get the Orlando Union Rescue Mission newsletter, you will see on the front of it a young man. His name is Chris Brooks, and Chris has been, I think he's been there for like 2 years in the program.
Yep.
He's been a guest there. And Chris went with us to Kentucky. I love that we do things with the Orlando Union Rescue Mission like that. And that was super cool. So he went, and then they did this write-up on him because he just graduated the program. He wants to go get his master's in social work. And He is just great. He's an awesome person. And I would recommend, and I don't know if they have it on their website or not. Maybe they do.
I'm pretty sure they do.
Yeah. And we it's just talk about anxiety.
Yeah.
This is what he's gone through, and which he talks about in the article. But, it's really, really cool to see that.
It just confirms to me every day how blessed we are to have some of the partnerships we have with OURM,
yes.
and the Children's Home, and with SAFE and Samaritan's Village. We just have some really amazing, transformative ministries that we get to be a part of.
Yeah, we do. It's very exciting. So that's all I have. Do you have anything else?
Nope, I'm good.
All right, guys. Well, we will see you if you're here tonight. We will both be here. Otherwise, we will see you this weekend. I hope you guys have an awesome day.